This week in the conversation, I had the privilege to welcome from Birmingham, England, fantasy writer Lisa Thomas. She's written a wonderful, compelling novel titled Unprecedented Times, based on COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're living right now. So it's interesting. But before we get to the video, I just want to remind everyone that it's important to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it'll go directly into your portable. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this afternoon with a very impeccable author. Her name is Lisa Thomas from Britain. I have to say, Lisa, welcome to the conversation.
Hello.
So officially to begin with, would you please tell the viewers of CSMS Magazine who is Lisa Thomas?
Well, as you say, I'm from England. I'm 36 years old. I'll be 37 in a couple of weeks. I live with my 3 children and 2 cats, so I'm clearly a sucker for punishment. I'm an author. I'm a self-employed content writer, so I've been a content writer since 2012. I've always wanted to become an author. So I had an idea for a book at the start of the pandemic, back in December when it started. I had the idea in January and began writing that up in March and finally became an author. So that's mainly what I do, and then alongside that I've obviously got hobbies like music and other stuff.
Okay, so we'll talk about that at the end of the conversation. But you know, I'm very much impressed because this is the first time since the pandemic began I'm speaking with an author who's written a fiction work based on this very unthinkable reality that we're all living right now. So it's titled Unprecedented Times.
Yeah.
Now, anyone who's watching this can clearly understand why you call it unprecedented. But could you please tell our viewers what led you to write this novel?
Well, I had the idea when I'd heard about the virus first breaking out in China, and I just thought how big it would be if it became a virus that became global and affected absolutely everybody. I was having conversations with people, and a lot of people were telling me it was just the flu, and I just had a gut instinct that it was going to be more than that. And I said to one of my friends, I said, this is going to impact all of us in some way or other. It's going to impact all of us. So I wanted to write a story based on how bad it could go, and just to sort of remind us as to what's important, to make us appreciate, you know, that actually we're all equals. When it comes to a virus doesn't discriminate. We're all equals, and we all have to sort of come together. So that's what sort of inspired it at first. But then as the virus sort of progressed, it led in a very similar direction to my book. So then I started to see it as a way of sort of documenting what was happening now for future generations, because obviously we can tell them, but to live through it is a completely different experience.
So if I understand correctly, this can easily be described as a contemporary historical fiction.
Almost. My story follows the pandemic up until a certain point, and then it goes off in a further direction. So in my book, the virus continues to mutate and becomes more of a threat to humanity, and humanity has a decision to make as to what we want to do. Obviously, that hasn't happened in reality, touch wood. It just happened that everything up until that point in my story where things went chaotic, everything else sort of married up perfectly. So I was able to include real statistics and data. So the first half of the novel is pretty much as it happened in real life.
Okay. If I understand also, there are 4 protagonists in the story. So we have Clara, Rosa, Dr. Vicente, and someone else.
Ben.
And Ben, actually, Ben, yeah. So the setting is mostly around your town, right?
Sorry?
Around your city, right? The setting. And
no, it's actually based in 2 settings. So Clara and Dr. Vicente, they work at the WHO, so they're based in Geneva. And then Rosa and her fiance Ben, they are based in Birmingham. But in part of the story, you don't know where they're located. They're not anywhere close to me.
These are fictional.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, because in my story, chapter 1 is the very start of the actual story.
Right.
And chapter 2 is the very end. And then they marry together towards the center of the novels. The 2 story timelines come together. So you don't know where Ben and Rosa are for a good portion of the novel.
You know, no, I understand unprecedented times has to be written the way you just described it. But do you think that writing a novel based on fact, because I know you say also it's a fact where facts meet fiction. So how does the press in your city, in Birmingham, receive the story?
To be honest, I haven't really had much local interest from the local press, but I haven't reached out to them an awful lot. I've sort of just been trying to market my book through sort of social media and get myself, my name sort of noticed. I sort of wanted to build up a bit of a background before I started to sort of reach out to the local press and things like that. But the local people that I've spoken to, the community, have been very receptive to it, and they all love the fact that it's fundraising for a COVID charity. They all love the fact that it's based in part on real life. So I've had a lot of good feedback from the people locally who have read it.
And you know what? This is a story that anyone can relate to because we're living it, you know. And I think just today where I live, it's been new advisories with regard to the people who didn't get vaccinated. And right now the virus is on the rise because of the fact that they didn't take what was necessary to protect themselves. So, I mean, we're still living it. And your novel actually is at the center of it. And I have to say this, frankly, I compliment you for taking time to pen this story that way. So before writing the story also, let me ask you something. I know it was at some point you've made a decision to write this fiction work, but are you also, besides the profit from the sale that would go towards this specific fund, are you also an activist in terms of trying to motivate people in your neighborhood, in your city, that they need to be vaccinated?
I do, as and when people ask my opinion, but I find that the problem is a lot of people have very strong opinions about it, and I don't want to be one of those people who goes around telling people that they should get vaccinated. I have been, and I've been fully vaccinated and have been for months now because I'm high risk. So for me, it's important. So what I've done is I've taken a sort of indirect approach to it. So rather than actually talk to people and say, I think you should go and get vaccinated, I've done things like posted pictures of myself getting vaccinated and complimenting the NHS and things like that. So I've tried to sort of encourage and motivate people that way. And where I've seen other people with concerns about whether it would hurt or how they would feel after, I've tried to reassure them with my real life experiences, just to sort of put their minds at ease. Because I do think it is important that people get vaccinated. Of course, I believe we need to get back to normality now, if only to save things like the economy and things like that, which are obviously suffering as a result of the virus.
It's true. That's true. And the sad thing is we just don't know when life can be fully back to normal, the way we knew it before the pandemic.
If it ever goes back all the way
Exactly.
to that. I mean, we've put a lot of things in place now, like online learning and things like that. It would be very easy to continue that, people working from home, and become a society where we mingle less with each other.
And you know what? If there's one of the main lessons that we learned from this pandemic is how important it is to socialize with people. And you know something is so critical when you lack that thing. Remember, fiction is based on reality. So it says you can never be a great novelist if you do not understand human behavior. So the pandemic really drives people to make decisions that can tremendously impact their lives. And I can tell you this, my own wife is a victim of this, not because she had the virus at some point, but she lost her mother to the virus.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So it's really, it's a tough time, but it makes me also understand humanity can never be safe unless we understand our role in this world. And for you to paint this story, it's also an extra layer in the drive to motivate people, not just about the virus, but how important it is to protect each other, because we need each other to make life as we know it an enjoyable endeavor.
That's a running theme throughout my book. I continuously say that we're better together. Even in my foreword before the book, I talk about how amazing it's been to come together as a global community. And actually, in my book, I've got dedications from the public, from people who've lost family members and stuff to the virus. They've dedicated my book to their lost loved ones, which has been lovely to be able to do that for them. But yes, I completely agree. We have to understand exactly how it's impacted people differently, and that's why I've got 4 main characters, because I wanted to show it from different people's perspectives. I wanted to see how different people suffer from it on different levels.
Okay. And I understand Rosa and Clara are twin sisters.
Yes, they are.
And Dr. Vicente plays, when Dr. Vicente comes into play, so what happens?
Well, Dr. Vicente is the Director General of the WHO,
right.
And Clara wants to be a scientist. She's working basically as a secretary to Dr. Vicente. So they work together, and one chapter will be from their 2 points of view. And then you've got Rosa and Ben, who are engaged and they've got a new child. So the next chapter is written from their point of view up until about 2/3 of the way through the story. And then each chapter is written from all 4 characters' point of views.
Beautiful. Now, Lister, let me ask you something. I know this is a trilogy, and this is book 1. So are you, right now as we speak, working on book 2?
Yes, I am, yes. I've just finished the research because my books are so factual and scientific based. I have to do a lot of research. So I've spent about 4 or 5, perhaps even 6 months understanding science and things like the vaccination and stuff, because obviously we have a vaccination for COVID now, but what we don't have is a vaccination for my mutated strain of COVID. So I've had to understand how to sort of immunise it, because regardless of whether they do or do not immunise against it in my book, the scientists will be working towards that goal. And obviously Dr. Vicente will be part of that. So I need to show their understanding and sort of thinking. So The research has been very heavy going, but I'm at a point now where I'm just starting to write it, and it's very exciting, yes.
And of course, there can never be novelistic prose without a love story as a backdrop of it. So could you tell us a little bit?
About the love story, did you say?
A love story always plays in the shadow of some great novelistic prose.
In this one, the main love story is Rosa and Ben. We meet them as an engaged couple, and they're just having their first child together. And we know that they're a couple that as soon as they got together, other people could see that they loved each other, not because they were told, but just from the way that they looked at each other. You know, they complement each other perfectly. Ben is completely in love with Rosa, always has been, dotes on her. And Rosa is just completely besotted by Ben. He's a bit of an idiot, and she loves the fact that he's an idiot. But because of the virus and because of what happens to them, they lose a good part of themselves, and that impacts upon their relationship. And they get to a point where they worry that they're pushing each other away, or that they can never be that couple that they were, because they've lost too much of themselves in the journey. So we see them sort of how they try to go through that, and their mindset of that. So yes, there's a love story there too.
Okay, so we don't want to tell the plot now. You know, we want to keep it just a little bit of secret. So, you know, you want to buy the book if you want to know the whole story. Yeah. So, and when do you anticipate of completing book 2?
I was hoping by December, but I think that might be a bit of a rush now, because I would like to have a good time after it to go through it and proofread it, edit it and whatnot. So I'm hoping within the next 12 months to have the second book out there ready for people to buy. Okay. And I'm also going to be including dedications and honours in that book too. So if there is any member of the public who has lost someone to the virus, they can dedicate my book or honour a community member for their efforts during the pandemic to thank them.
So in other words, you have to purchase the book directly from your website in order for some proceeds to go to the fund. What happens if someone gets the book directly from, let's say, Amazon, for example?
It doesn't matter where you buy the book from. More than 50% of the book sales go to the COVID charity. I've got a Just Giving page set up, and every order has a different number or a date. So I always put the donation for that date, so people can log on and see exactly where their donation is. Every single book donates £2 to the charity, and my target is £200. So I'm hoping to just get 100 book sales to reach that target. That'd be fantastic.
And just for the purpose to keep up with the time, and every time I have a guest on the conversation, at some point, Lisa, we stop talking about literature and we begin to talk about something a little bit more cozy, because I know you're a mom and you read to your children too, because you can't be an impeccable writer without being an avid reader, right? And you can say that you're supposed to read more than you write. Mm-hmm. So are you also getting the kids into the habit of reading?
Oh, my kids love reading, and I absolutely love it about them. When my daughter was 7, the school did a test on her reading age, said she had a reading age of 12 and above, and put her on free reading. So for the last 3-4 years, we've been reading things like Roald Dahl, and she's reading the David Williams books now, which are interesting because I think that he's taken a lot of inspiration from Roald Dahl, which is what first inspired me as a child. Okay. But yeah, no, they love reading, and they're really good at it as well. They get lost in their own little imaginations. Sometimes I'll write little stories for them which they really enjoy, because obviously then they're in it. So yeah, they love it.
Okay, so there comes the nice question. Who is your favorite writer?
Oh, it's so difficult to say.
Everybody says the same thing.
Pick a favorite child.
Everyone says the same thing. Okay, I mean, you just one.
Oh, it really does depend on my mood. I love Dan Brown books because I feel like I learn a lot from Dan Brown and I enjoy the story. It doesn't always go as I expect it. But
Okay.
I love Tolkien. I love Lord of the Rings. I love Rowling and Harry Potter. So it's really difficult to say. It just depends on my mood. Um, I
No
don't know.
name? Oh, you say Harry Potter, so A.K.
Yeah, well,
Rowling.
I could read Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit over and over again.
Okay.
So yeah, I love him, but equally, like I say, I love the Dan Brown books and Philip Pullman novels. I like the Anne Rice books, and my favourite book is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So I can't choose a favourite author. It's like asking me to choose a favourite child.
Now, it seems like fantasy is your preferred genre in literature. Huh?
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
not really one for lovey-dovey stories and things like that. I prefer something that's got a bit more nitty-gritty to it, and I like being lost in an imaginary world. So
Okay.
that's why I enjoy things like Harry Potter and things like that, because it takes me to a different world.
Okay. Now, I know again as a mother cooks for children.
Hmm.
So, what is your favorite cuisine, Lisa?
Oh, to eat or to cook?
Both. Both.
Oh, I love food. Right, so I love eating curry. I could eat curry every single day. And
Really?
my kids like curry too. They don't quite like it as spicy as I do, but they enjoy curry too. But my favourite thing to cook is things like cookies and banana loaf and fresh bread, things like that. Simple things,
Simple things.
simple
Very
things,
difficult ones.
simple things that I can enjoy eating.
Okay. Now, if there's a lesson, Lisa, you wouldn't want to give to any young writer like you who would love to embark upon a journey to use his or her pen, okay? Teaching about some very, very important things like the pandemic to motivate people. So, what would you say?
I would say to have confidence in yourself, to push the boundaries. Don't always do what you think is expected of you. Do what you feel is right. To create a book that you are proud of. Don't worry about anybody else. Just worry about creating the story that you are proud of. And if you can get even halfway through a book, that's more than the millions of other people out there who have had an idea and have never even gotten that far. You have to appreciate your own achievements along the way, regardless of how small they are, because that's what motivates you to keep going. Read back through your writing, and sometimes I'll read back through something and I'll think, did I write that? That's actually pretty good. I'm pretty proud of myself for that. A pat on the back. And it's those little moments that, as a writer, I think pushes you through. There's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of people out there that want to be seen. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be seen. But don't do it for that. Do it for the purpose of achieving that goal of writing something that you personally think is good.
There was another writer, a fantasy writer like you, a young woman named Sarah Bushway. She was one of my guests here in the conversation. She said pretty much the same thing. She said, you should never remove yourself from the story. When you keep sharing your story with a whole bunch of other folks, and they always like to come back and with their own little personal opinion. And then if you keep removing things, then there's going to be a point where you find out that this is no longer your story.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see exactly what you're talking about.
I think the story has to have a piece of your heart in there. And you can't let other people determine that part of the story. That has to come from you. It can't come from anyone else.
Exactly. And with that, I'm just going to say it's been such a pleasure. to
Thank you ever
have.
so much for having me.
And the conversation, wonderful, beautiful Lisa Thomas, a great
Thank
fantasy writer.
you.